Hi, everyone. It's Robert Jones with the iEntrepreneur radio show on the iEntrepreneur Network. And I am excited that everyone is here today to be with three wonderful guests. Today, we're going to be talking about something that, you may not believe me right now as I speak, but one thing that I really think makes a difference, it matters. And that is image. Image is all around us. From branding of a person to branding of a corporation to, even the way that you model and speak and look and dress and the way that you can convey yourself in any manner at any given time, how we convey ourselves, our emotion, the way we look physically, and even the intellect, how we use our words, they're all being judged. And it all creates this wonderful thing called image. And if you have that it factor, people will just gravitate to you and come to you because they feel like it's a place that they want to be around. And I always say, it's not a matter of if, but it's a matter of when you want to make a great image change. And I'm really excited that we have Mary Lynn Ilnitsky with Grit Dressed on Purpose. She will be our first speaker today. But before I get into that, I want to make sure that everyone who's watching, please like us on Facebook. Go ahead and subscribe to our channel. It's youtube.com/iEntrepreneur.com. See, I have it up here for everyone. And also, check out 365networkingquotes.com. That is a book that we're putting out to other entrepreneurs, influencers, and business owners, all around the world. It's our way as a community to give back to others who may not have gotten through COVID in the way that we have. So let's lend us the hope, the inspiration, and support through having your best quote, a thought, and a comment. And you can just, message me here on the show or find me at robert@networktogether.net. That's my email address. So I am so excited for today's show. But before we go there, I have to play a couple of messages from our sponsors. Thanks.
Network Together. It's all about connections. Expand your sphere of influence. Build relationships. Be part of something bigger. Be part of Network Together.
Well, I'm really excited to bring my first guest on today, Mary Lynn Ilnitsky. Mary Lynn, hi, welcome to the iEntrepreneur radio show. How are you?
I'm great, Robert. It's nice to see you.
It is nice to see you too. Let me, I'm doing all the backroom work as well. So let me, I gotta change down something just a second. All right. So I am excited. So right now you are up in the wonderful world of Canada, yes?
Yeah, and it's darn cold today, and there's going to be snow tomorrow.
Well, yeah, I was talking to another guest that is coming on the show, and what I think is really funny, it's so funny because she's in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and what she stated was like, oh my goodness, it's getting cold here. And I said, yeah, I can imagine that. But I told her, I said, it's also getting cold in Mesa, Arizona, the Phoenix area. And I said, instead of being 110 or 15, we're actually around 100 to 102 degrees. So for me, that is like a total cool wave.
Well, it happened really quickly up here. We had a beautiful fall. Even last week over our Canadian Thanksgiving, we were in the low 60s, maybe mid 60s, and now we're well into the 40s. It's just a matter of a couple of days. It's just really, we know what's to come now. So I guess we just have to get the winter boots out and the scarves and the gloves and the puffy coats.
Well, Mary Lynn, we've known each other for quite some time, and I really just want to dig into, some of the wonderful conversations that we've had over the years with brand. But, really, there's a lot of things that I really don't know about you. I don't know, too much about, your upbringing and maybe what kind of how you modeled after with your mom and your dad, maybe brothers and sisters. Tell us a little bit about your background, like where you were born, maybe where you went to school. Let us know a little bit about that Mary Lynn that I know, like, and trust.
Well, I was born here in Edmonton, actually, and my parents. My mom is Canadian. My father was a Texan, and they came to Canada for a big oil field that was found up here in the 50s. So there, I'm dating myself. I'm one of 6 children. I have an older brother and 3 brothers younger than I am, and 1 sister also younger than myself. We were raised in Calgary, Alberta, which is the home of the Calgary Stampede. Many people probably know of the Calgary Stampede, the greatest outdoor show on earth, according to Calgary.
Right, of course.
I came back up to Edmonton and went to university and achieved a degree in home economics with my signature on most of my correspondence. I have PHEC behind my name because I am a professional home economist, which is a designation that I earned through the work I've done throughout my career. And so I've done that. And then I was fortunate to marry a wonderful man who worked for a major agricultural implements company and for his whole career. And he took us across Western Canada and then to Arizona, where I met you I think we met probably in about 2009 while we were in Arizona. And so we were in Arizona for 8.5 years. And then we came back to Canada when he retired. And we've been here for, I guess, almost 4.5 now, back here.
Well, what I always remember when we first met is I remember you used to say much of the time, we are how we dress. We communicate with the way that we dress. People are attracted. They determine if you're successful or not successful. They determine, in a blink of an eye, if they're going to do business with you, because of how you carry yourself. Tell us a little bit about, some of the structure that you looked at or the process you go about, when you look at someone on how they dressed in any given meeting.
Well, you're right, Robert. The first thing people see when they meet someone new or you go into a room where you're faced with a number of people that you don't know is your clothing and how you've put yourself together. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing worse than walking into a meeting or a dinner or even, a party and not being dressed appropriately. There's nothing worse than blowing the dress code. Because when you do that, whether it's a spoken or unspoken dress code, when you do that, it's uncomfortable. You don't feel good. And it affects your body language. It affects your ability to speak. It affects your ability to network and communicate with people because you're all tied up in your head with, oh, crumb, I blew it. I feel so uncomfortable. So I think that it's really important to understand that how we present ourselves visually is a primary communication tool. And we can be in charge of that message.
Well, and I'm going to go ahead and jump in here with you on this because I remember, many times I, going in Queen Creek, Arizona, it's an outlying area in Phoenix. And I wouldn't call it the most cosmopolitan area of Phoenix at the time when you were there. But, what I liked about you, Mary Lynn, is in a way you really were fearless about challenging people in the way that they dressed and how they carried themselves. I mean, for you, one of the statements that you said was image is your impact.
Yes.
And if you don't carry the image of what my preconception should have or a level higher, I potentially can lose business just by walking through the door.
Well, it's true, and so many of the people that we networked with in Queen Creek were young women who were working on behalf of their spouses who had the business, and they would come to our meetings and talk about that family business and how they were helping to generate income for their spouse by networking their business for them. And so many just arrived looking like they rolled out of bed. And I'm sorry, that's probably rather judgy, but I know I had an opportunity to work with a number of them, and it changed their approach to that, because they realized that if I want to be taken seriously as an assistant to my husband's or my spouse's business, then I need to look like I'm in business too, not like I'm just a helper. And to get that kind of an identity. And not only did it improve the way they presented themselves, and hopefully improved how they were able to help with the businesses, their family businesses, but I think it was really good for their own sense of self and their own self-esteem, because when you look good, you feel more confident and secure, period.
Well,
I don't care what anybody says. When you make that little extra effort, it makes a huge difference about how you feel.
well,
And so therefore, it impacts the way you deal with others. Sorry, you're interrupting me.
Yeah, no. And, because here's the thing. One thing I do is I believe that, not all entrepreneurs believe in this, but I believe that every entrepreneur should be a great writer. I think that they should journal their notes and keep them over time. My wife and I argue all the time because she's always trying to get rid of stuff. I'm the guy who wants to keep my sock and it still has a hole in it. I like the comfort, even though I will dress up. But one of the things that you said, and I looked back at my notes and I attribute this quote to you, and you said, be the owner, not the employee.
Yes.
And I always love that quote because, for me, for a long time, I was in the tech background. I was always in the office. It seemed like I was always working at night. My favorite joke is why do programmers do their best work at night? And the answer is because they're too busy arguing during the day. So they still had to meet deadlines. And I remember sitting there and I really started changing myself. And you helped me say, Robert, you're not the employee anymore. You're not even the manager. You're the owner. And if I'm to look around this room, am I looking to you for leadership? And I love that you said that to me.
Well, and it obviously worked, because look where you are now compared to where you were when we used to network together at the very beginning, because it's just the exponential growth in your business is remarkable. And congratulations on that. Good for you.
Well, thank you. I mean, we've gone from 5 people in a local coffee shop, Rhino Cafe in Queen Creek, Arizona, to being one that has a reach that's international now. We have 8 different countries represented in Network Together and 5 different countries represented in the book so far. But I always attribute it back to, we always talk about begin with the end in mind. And so much of the time, we always concentrate on the what of it or the how of it, but we don't very often take much time out on the why of it. And really, what do you look like to others when you reach and you're working or you're traveling that journey of being known? And I think that's one of the things you always talked about. And you talked about the hair and the cleanliness and the color. I mean, one of the most interesting things that you and I worked on is you have a color palette that you could work with. And I still have that color palette.
Good.
And with that color palette, I'm able to go to any store and match up my skin with proper clothing that works with me. Tell us a little bit about the color theory that you had when you and I worked together.
Well, color is really the magic ingredient in building a wardrobe that works. Because when you wear colors that coordinate with your natural skin, hair, and eye colors, then you don't have to work so hard on everything else. So we know that based on our racial heritage, that people come with either blue or yellow undertones to their skin. The blue is melanin and the yellow is keratin. And these are pigments. There are 3 pigments in our body chemistry, melanin, hemoglobin, and keratin. We all know what hemoglobin is. It's blood and it's red. But the blue and the yellow really determine our undertone. And it only makes sense when you know what your undertone of your skin, hair, and eyes are, that you wear colors that coordinate with that. So if you have more melanin and you have more blue undertone, then we consider that cool. And so to wear cool colors like cherry red or emerald green or sapphire blue to wear the blacks, the grays, and the whites will work better for you. But right. let me just finish.
Yeah, no. I'm just adding. I got to add something with that. This is great. Yes.
So if you have more of the golden undertone or the keratin in your body chemistry, then the oranges and the yellows and the browns are going to work better with your skin, hair, and eyes. And the thing is, when you wear a color of opposite undertone, so say you have cool undertones, so the blue, and you wear orange, then all these things happen on your face that just bring shadows and show all the imperfections. When you're wearing the right color, the color that matches your undertones, you don't have to work so hard because all those imperfections disappear. And I have seen it time and time again. I have done analysis on thousands of people, and it is automatically, when you see the right undertone, it's just like, wow, that's amazing. And the system I use is really simple, so you can see it too. And I remember when we did that, you did see it.
Well, and see, I'm bringing it back. This is what's great about having three wonderful female guests on our show, because, I'm going to bring it back to guy sense. And see, so for me, I'm going, that is so much for me to take in. But how you explained it to me is you kind of, you explained it. I don't know if you remember this, but you kind of say, does it fit like Legos? We may not know theoretically if it works or not intellectually, but we know, like almost emotionally, subliminally, if colors work together. And for guys like me, what work means is if you have two Legos that don't match, they just don't fit. But if you have your color palette right and you dress with the right style, the Legos will fit each and every time. And I remember you explaining that to me, and that's where I had this little light bulb that goes off. Because when people are looking at me up and down, they're looking at me to see, do I match or and do I mesh, or am I mixed mashed? Because the quality of a person's matching is also the quality of the job or the perception of how they're going to work with me. It's like having a messy room versus a clean room. It's like having an organized, presentation versus an unorganized presentation. All of these attributes have to come together, so you can get to the point of true conversation and breaking down any barriers and preconceptions that each person has.
It's true. Yeah, I agree.
And so that's what I really, really love that you did when you walked in, that when you worked with us, and that, it's not so sleepy anymore, Marilyn. Queen Creek is growing by, leaps and bounds. And, it may reach cosmopolitan status in another 50 years, but, it's getting there. Just some last thoughts, what's a couple of tips that you can give maybe our viewers, before I go on to the next guest?
Just be in charge of the message. Be in charge of what you want to say visually. And if you need a little assistance with that, engage someone who has the expertise to help you. There are image consultants all over North America, South America, Europe, everywhere. First world countries where this is really an important part of business and growing. So I just say, try and find someone. If you feel you need the assistance, it's worth every penny, and it's not a long-term investment. It's a learned skill. So once you've learned it, you're away to the races.
You are, and another thing that you did really well is you have a wardrobe audit, and I will never forget this. And I remember I had this much clothing because I like to keep everything, and I ended up with this much clothing, but the clothing that I had worked.
Yes.
And I think a cluttered mind, like a cluttered closet or cluttered wardrobe, people can, visually see that when you go out in the public if you are not matched up. And I really appreciate, how much you gave me and how you really changed my life, to walk across the stage or to be on a show or just to be out in public and have people approach me like they know me. And so I owe a lot of that, if not all of that, to you, Marilyn. And how can people get a hold of you? I have your information scrolling across the screen. Is there anything else that you'd want to offer anyone who's on the show?
I most of what I'm doing now is virtual because, of course, of COVID. So reach out to me. You can also check out my website, getdressedonpurpose.com. Thank you for Robert for that because he's helped me with that. And just reach out to me and give me a shout, and I do a 30-minute complimentary consultation. I'm very good with Zoom. I love working with the visuals of with people. So that's my best tip, or reach out. Yeah, that's how I think that would work really well.
And if anyone wants to get a referral, they certainly can come to me as well here locally. Mary Lynn, you're phenomenal. I'm glad we've had such a trusted relationship over the last 10 years. And you know what? I'm looking forward to another 10. So let's keep up the image and let's keep up the impact. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
You bet.
Join the 1% Club and become a #1 bestseller. 1% of entrepreneurs maximize their SEO and marketing. You are invited to become a contributing author for the guaranteed best-selling book, 365 Quotes from Networkers. Contact your show host to find out how. Join the 1% Club today.
Hey, I mean, my goodness, the commercial goes. I have someone back in the house. Dr. Soni, how are you?
I'm fantastic. And you, Robert?
I am fantastic. I feel like I'm actually the luckiest man in the world with you and Mary Lynn and Sheila. I mean, what guy wouldn't feel like he's on top of the world?
Right. And Sean, don't forget Sean.
Well, she's not on our show, so don't tell her, okay?
Well, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you here. And, and we talked about this a little bit before we got on the show. And, I really attempt to live my life in any way where, if I'm going to learn, let's make it fun. If I'm going to work, let's make it fun. And certainly, with my family and everything else, I always feel like the best life is a life where you're living in your authentic self with your full power and your passion, and you're having fun doing it. Because, I think that attitude is as much, concerning impact and image as anything else. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely.
So I'm going to do the same thing. We've known each other about 2 years now, believe it or not. I mean, time is racing by.
It is.
And I met you through Speaker Pathway Coalition. And I always remember your hair because I don't know. I always remember your hair because it's like my wife. She's that redhead. So for some reason, people used to always tease me. It's like they said, Robert, I think you know every redhead in the world. And I said, yeah, I just happen to be the guy that gets along with all those redheads and whatnot. I mean, that fire is always something caliente. But what I want to ask you is, the same way with Mary Lynn. I mean, I don't know, like your upbringing and why you became you. Were you interested in the stars? Were you interested in business? Did you want to be an entrepreneur, or were you one of those people that just wanted to get out of the house? Tell me a little bit about your background and some of your pursuits early on.
It's really interesting that you put it that way. I actually, just to start at the end, I really never intended to be an entrepreneur. I married into it.
Oh, wow.
But starting at the beginning, I'm an Army brat. My dad was a colonel and my mom was a housewife. And it's funny that Mary Lynn said that she was a home economist, that my mom actually, and I used to mock her when I was in school.
Really?
I mocked her to no end about going and being a home ec major. Little did I know, that is actually a really tough major. She was a double major in chemistry and management. And she had 4 kids and she needed all of those skills for sure. And to stretch a military salary over 4 children.
Well, I want you to know, when I was in high school, I took a quarter of home economics, and I was the only guy in there. And when they asked me to go for the second semester, I said, no, I'll do basket weaving. I'll do fishing. I don't care what it is, but I'm not going to do home economics, because I didn't realize how many plates you would have to spin in that environment. And it's one of the things I always look at. Times are changing a little bit, but for many women in society, they lots of times they wear the two hats. They are the CEO of the family in the house, mm-hmm. and then they're the CEO of their own life, whether an entrepreneur at work. And I'm really amazed, how, women, my mom is the same. She was a single mom. I mean, I love women. I adore women, and I love my mom. And I think it starts, the head of the household when it comes, from the passion of the emotion and reaching out and how would I say, nurturing. It stems so much from the feminine side of things. Life is changing, but one of the things that I'd like to talk with you about is we talked about some of the physical things, the manifestations of physical impact and image. But some of the things I want to talk about with you, Dr. Soni, is what you, to me, you're almost like a wordsmith in a certain way. So it's like, not only does image matter the way we look, and remember my son Troy, he said, what's the most important thing when you walk into the room? And my son was like, a smile, because he wants to walk up to someone who's frumpy and dumpy. A smile is very important, but also the words. Tell us a little bit about your theory of image with respect to words.
Well, quite often in the online world in particular, the first way that we experience others is through their words, whether it be an email that comes up or a website or listening to a podcast. And the way that we focus our energy comes out through those words. When we're always talking about us and our needs, and, you've heard it, I've got the best this, and I'm selling this, and I'm doing that. Well, people turn that off. We call, there was a book. Well, let's see. Was it a book? I know there's a podcast called Cheese and Whiskers. The cheese. That's what it was. But it's about the fact that we as a society discount ads. Mm-hmm. Anything that sounds like advertising, we're going to ignore it. Whereas when you start focusing on the people that you're serving, and you are a master at this, Robert, that you just really, you get into the heads and the hearts, and you are really focused on the people that you serve. And you speak to them, you speak with them about what their needs are. So it's not necessarily about what Network Together can do for you. It's more about, well, what is it that you need? Yeah. Oh, well, maybe I have a solution, but if I don't, maybe I know somebody who does. And that's the beautiful thing I love about Network Together, is that you are bringing people together so that their needs can be met, no matter what they are.
Well, and I think it really does come across in words. One of the things I like to say is you have to have your heart set before you can work on your mindset. Absolutely. I at one time was close to a world-class athlete. And one of the things, my master's was exercise physiology and sports psychology. And before that, I was business with a minor in communications in psychology. And I remember being in that environment, and you ask any athlete, is it their head or their heart that keeps them going? 99.9% of the time, they say, it's my heart. Am I going to do one more gasser? Am I going to do one more bend and thrust? Am I going to do one more squat or one more bench press? They never say, well, my head said to do it. No, it's their heart that gives them that drive. And I think, words can have that effect. They can have the emotional and intellectual effect that changes someone from glancing at it to actually reading it.
Right. And when you were speaking with Marianne, it was about authenticity and the truth and being there where they feel heard. I was teaching something recently, and I said, when you get down to that pain where you're actually reading a sales letter and you see it and you come to tears, mm-hmm. You're at the right place. Yeah. Because unless you're evoking an emotion, people will rarely take action. They have to know that you understand where they are in this moment. Yes, you may have the solution to getting them out of it, but until they understand, until they know, that you know where they are right in this moment, you can't offer them the solution.
Well, and I say really good copywriting, really good emotion, really good, the mental intellectual aspects. What they do is they align and they tap into my own belief system. And what really makes it, I love it when you can actually get something long enough where you can hear a little bit about the hero's journey. What were the pivots points? And because the thing is, if you're up there and I saw that you were down here, so to speak, I want to know, what did you do? And is there any patterns? Is there any, modeling that I can go through, and follow your path? And I think that's human nature. Since we're such social creatures and we're such storytellers, I mean, it's all in the story, right?
Yeah.
What's that saying? Stories tell and facts tell and stories sell. So tell me like one story that you were able to craft with a client of yours. You don't need to say who they are. And it just made a tremendous amount of difference in their life and their potential clients' lives.
Well, I can think of a couple. One, somebody that was putting on a summit, and she helps women. She supports women in their transformation. And she just really was kind of struggling with the top level, if you will, like, hey, your life's going to be better. I know your life sucks, blah, blah, blah. Pardon my language. But right. And what we did is we really took it down and looked at what is it that the women she was targeting were experiencing. Like, you're hitting your 40s and you're starting to doubt yourself. Your kids are getting a little bit older and your whole life has been wrapped up in raising them. So who are you? It's all about like, really, you're in the middle of the night and you're sitting there thinking, okay, so what's next for me? What really brings the acid to my stomach in the middle of the night? What am I worried about? Is my husband going to want me still? Am I going to be able to do something with, hopefully I'm going to live another 50 years. What am I going to do with the next 50 years? Who am I? And so really taking it down to that powerful place. Another one of our friends read the copy for it and was like, yeah, that's so dark. And it's so, she was crying. And then the solution was offered and she was like, okay, I feel better now. But boy, right there, you really took me to a very dark place. And sometimes you have to do that. But that event, I remember being very successful for her.
Well, and I love that you say that, because I always say, even in pop song, even in music, the best ones, have the highs and the lows, and then they have the bridge. And I believe there's a magic to energy, and all energy is really musical. It's vibrations.
Yeah.
And, and if you tap into the vibrations and emotions are just magical, they tap into the subconscious, and, it's really what brings us together. And so much of the time we're so concentrated on what we want when we forget that we're really here to serve. People, there's like this whole awakening, I think, worldwide, where we can see the difference between someone who is of a servant's heart versus someone who wants to self-serve. And you agree?
Absolutely. It's so obvious. And for me, it's a real turn off. Like, I see somebody going down that path and it's like, we're all tuned into WIIFM. What's in it for me radio, right? Yeah. And when somebody's coming all about them, you're like, I can't, all I'm hearing is static, right?
Yeah, right.
So when you start talking to me about me, well, that's the most interesting topic you have.
Absolutely. And the other thing too, and I know this about you, one of the things I say all the time is words matter. I mean, words matter. We grow up with them, and sometimes I feel like, and this is how I feel, right? Doesn't Bill Heinrich always says it's the only thing I really know, because everything else is, just a dream. But, what I feel about words is words are one of the most abused concepts in modern language. So many people, we throw words around like friend and entrepreneur and love and, you know, commitment and impact and business coach, you know, that we forget, what do those words really mean? You know what I mean? It's definitionally speaking. Sometimes I hear people speak and I feel like, you know, which dictionary are they reading out of? Because I don't understand what they're saying anymore. You know, and I'm sure as a words person, you know, you probably see that as well.
Oh, absolutely. I think you were there. I did a speech one time and I opened with, I grew up in a bilingual home, not traditional, you know, like Spanish or English, Spanish and English, or like my nephew who grew up in Korean and English. I spoke mom and dad. And for some reason, these two brilliant people would be saying the same exact thing, yet they had so many misunderstandings. And I never understood what that misunderstanding was. But my dad is a very concrete sequential. My mom's very random abstract. And so they'd be saying the same things, but their words never translated. So I kind of grew up being a translator. And that's what I just really, it jazzes me to get in there and figure out what your ideal audience needs to hear and how they need to hear it. Because we're all wired differently. But once you tune into that specific person, you can really learn their language, right?
And I really do think that that's key, because I think so much of the time we concentrate on what we do far too much, and we don't concentrate on who we are. And actually, I believe that the more we know who we are, the better we can actually communicate with other people. And it's also marketing, because I can attract the people who I can really serve if I know my true self. And I can also, you know, really repel those who I'm unable to work with. Yes. And that's why I think that words matter so much on an intellectual and emotional construct.
Absolutely. They matter.
You know? So when you work with a potential client, you know, you're gonna know if, oh boy, they just butcher words versus they're on a really high level plane versus anywhere in between. What are some of the things that you look at, or what are some of the tips that you can give us on, you know, just communication measures? Or actually, you know, I love communication because there's always a receiver, right? You know, and an encoder. And, you know, what are some of the things that we can do to model our communication and our messages better?
First, study who you want to talk to. Find out more about them. Find out what jazzes them. Find out where they're hanging out. What kinds of words are they using? You know, the 20-somethings are using different language than our 70-somethings. Right? So true. But that is the key, is defining your avatar. Who do you want to talk to? And learn about them. Become interested in them. That is my foundation. The second thing is, if you have trouble writing, record it, because you usually don't have trouble speaking. You know, Dr. Karen Perkins, she is an amazing communicator. She just doesn't enjoy writing. She trips herself up. But I tell you, you get that woman on the phone or in front of an audience and amazing things happen. Absolutely. So all I do is I ask her questions, just like you do for me. I'm interviewing her and I'm trying to get, because I do have the end in mind, you know, asking what we're planning on doing. Okay, what do we want to accomplish? Okay, let's figure out how to get there. So I kind of deconstruct my path there and do an interview. And so I'll just record that interview and then I'll do some massaging to add in the language that we need that will really resonate with our ideal audience.
You know, and that is something that people really have a fear of. They have a fear of listening to their own voice. And it's no wonder why for so many of us, communication is an art and a science at the same time. You know, and those, you know, once we get past ourselves, you know, it starts to become a little bit easier, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah, get over yourself. That's perfect.
I mean, just, you know, like the radio show. I love talking. I love training. I love teaching. I love having fun. You know me. I'm all about the energy and the attitude, because that covers up all my other failings, right? No, but yeah. But you know, the thing is it was like, you know, doing a show, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that means I'm going to have to see myself and face myself every day. And I know that other people have that, but it's like anything else. I always say, like in athletics, my background that I was in, you know, you just start, buy the right shoes, get the right socks, the right equipment, and just lace them up and just walk. And then all of a sudden you just keep walking and walking and walking until you start running, and then you find the beauty in it all. And it's the same way with words and communication.
You know, that's actually a good point, because sometimes with the writing, if you do a brain dump, you know, sometimes that helps you just get all those ideas out. I have so many friends that, you know, have the spinning wheels or the monkeys that are just chattering. And I'm like, okay, pick one thought, write it down.
Yep.
And then it's in a safe place. Then pick the next one, write it down. It's in a safe place. And what you'll see is there's a thread. And all you have to do is, once it's written down, it's so much easier to organize it. But if you keep trying to pull it out of the ether, it's really difficult, right?
Yeah.
And it's just a matter one step at a time.
And don't forget these little things. And I say that because, you know, I've typed for a long time, but I'm one of those people that gets up at 2 or 3 in the morning. It's like I always remember I always remember the meaning of life at 3 in the morning for some reason. And I'm always getting up. And what I do once I'm defining the meaning of life, so I can tell everyone this is why God made everything the way God made it. Right. I get out my phone, and I go to my notes app, and I turn on my little microphone and I speak in it. And I do that because, gosh, it actually writes better than I write. And then I memorialize all those crazy random thoughts and I can organize them in here. But, you know, I always say this, you know, it's a funny thing about technology. Technology can, you know, it can speed an experience, but it can't speed a relationship. But, you know, and that's one thing about technology. And that's why sometimes I feel like communication sometimes gets so, for lack of a better word, bastardized, is because we try to speed the communication, the message, the relationship far faster because technology has created that monster in us. But on the flip side is, you know, for ourselves, use technology to its fullest benefit. Instead of writing it in a notepad every night, put it digitally. Send it to yourself, print it out from an email. And guess what? You will never lose your meaning of life ever again.
I love that. Monty Python would love that.
so tell us about, you know, how to get a hold of you, and maybe what does a session look like with you if we were to hire you right on the spot.
Well, you can, my phone number is there at the bottom. It's also in the chat. And I actually have a little defining your avatar, bit.ly here, define your avatar. And it's a free worksheet and a 9-minute lesson that I actually take you through about the process of defining it, because it won't only work for me, who writes this copy that will really attract people, but it helps people like Preston Martelli, you know, who's a digital marketer. So that helps put it in the right place so that you get a lot of traffic. And so what a session would look like with me, and I do those, a 15-minute strategy session, is I listen to what you're wanting. I do an interview. What do you want? What are the results you want to see? How do you see that looking? And what can I do for you? Here are some things that I do. I edit copy. If you've already written it, I write email sequences. I write, you know, landing pages and this and that and the other. But what I do is I kind of figure out who you want to serve best. I will advise you on where I think you're going to find them and what kinds of things that would appeal to them. I will also ask you what your knowledge is in that.
And you know, I love that you did something here, and I'm going to break on this with you because this is about you. And you said free. And so much of the time I hear bad things about free or complimentary. But you know what? One of the things, a smile is free. Yeah. You know, putting your hand out to shake it in you know, to someone who's maybe not as outgoing as you, that's free. You know what free means is I'm willing to give something to create a conversation that may lead into being a client. And I think sometimes, you know, again, the words matter. You free isn't necessarily a bad thing. Free is just a starting place of contribution to someone else's life to see if you can meet some type of need that needs met.
Yeah. Well, studies have shown actually free 24-hour recorded message is the highest
conversion, or
thank you, the highest converting phrase ever.
Well,
free 24-hour recorded message.
Well, think
because
about
that means that we're not going to be sold to.
Absolutely, but it also means there's also I think there's subliminally there's trust there. I mean, who is there 24/7 other than your mom when you were a baby?
Right.
I mean, that matters. Well, Dr. Soni, thank you so much for being here today. I mean, I enjoy talking to you so much each and every time. And as we keep getting to know each other, we might end up with our own show together. So
that'd be wonderful. Thank you, Robert. You have a fantastic evening.
You too. Thank you so much as well.
Network together. It's all about connections. Expand your sphere of influence. Build relationships. Be part of something bigger. Be part of Network Together.
Wow. Hey, Sheila, how are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Happy to be with you, Robert.
I am so happy to be with you as well. And, it is all about the connections. And a mutual friend of ours had an event and you were able to be at the event. My wonderful, beautiful wife, Sean, saw you and she's like, oh my gosh, we have to have this South Dakota bison person on our show, and which you are here now. and I love it because connections really should be treated as, to a certain respect, like a family, because connections are everything. I always said no business ever existed without clients, and clients start from having connections.
That's right. That's right.
And I see that I have Dr. Soni's banner rolling across. Oh, she's so lucky. Let me put your banner across. There we go. Oh my gosh. There we go. Fire that production guy, right? Well, welcome to the show. I hopefully you got to see a little bit of way about how I talk with my guests and bring out different conversation points. And you got to meet a longtime dear friend, Mary Lynn Elnitsky. Mm-hmm. She really was probably the first fabric in my tapestry that started making me look at how I look a little bit different later in life. And then of course with Dr. Soni Jackson. She's helped wordsmith a lot of clients in my life. But like what I love about you, Sheila, and what I was looking at so far is you also look at the emotional, part of bridging and building, branding for corporations or individuals and everything in between, which we will get to that. But in the same manner, I want to know a little bit more about you. What your dad, your mom, where you're from, some education, what started planting the seeds for who I see today?
Yeah, so I am a South Dakota girl, born and raised, have never lived any other place. So I love it here. I love the wide open spaces. Grew up in a very normal home. My dad worked for the Corps of Engineers, so we always lived on the Missouri River. And my mom was a nurse, so she was very nurturing. And from a very early age, aesthetics mattered to me. How things looked, how things were put together always mattered. When I was growing up, I would very often redecorate my room. And I would spend hours and hours and hours redecorating my room. And then I'd bring my mom in to come look at my room afterwards. I would just glean with I would just be beaming and so excited when she would say, oh, I love how you moved this or that. And even to the point where if my mom and dad were having guests over, that I would go into the living room, and if I would see something on an end table that was off just a little bit, I would just, nudge it over a little bit, and then it looked better to me. I can remember, driving down the highways growing up and looking at billboards and not paying attention maybe to the message so much as how things were laid out and the font they use and the color and all that. So that really, growing up, I really didn't think a whole lot of that, but that really played into what I do now from a personal branding standpoint.
And I think that matters. I mean, it's really interesting because I always have a theory. I have a theory that says, there's really three main things that create a person. The first is, what is the nature, right? And so I'm listening to you and I'm thinking like you had a natural, a nature knack for your environment and your surroundings. And then, we can add to that with the nurture that comes from it. What did mom add? What did dad add? What did brothers and sisters, education, etc. add? And then the last thing, even if you didn't like either one of those, you still have this little thing called the noodle that could even trump nature and nurture. But to me, it sounds like from an early age, you really had your end in mind early on.
Mm-hmm. I remember going to my mom in 10th grade and said, I want to be an interior designer. And she said, I think you better rethink that because there's not always a lot of money in interior design. And I remember thinking, oh, what am I going to do? And then we talked about graphic design. And so I did go to school a couple years for graphic design. But in the end, I'm very creative by nature. So I had to do something in the artistic field. And that was always in the back of my mind. And kind of how I got started in the personal branding and corporate branding and all that is, very much like Mary Lynn, I was focused on my appearance and not really loving how I was putting myself together. Again, I was super creative and I felt cookie cutter and I felt invisible. And being invisible maybe wasn't so much about being seen as maybe not really loving how I was projecting myself and not loving really who I was internally. So I had to figure out who I was internally and how I could bring that out. And in a sense, I became my own art project. And I started putting myself together aesthetically, using the concept that Mary Lynn talked about of the colors that look good on you, and not only the colors that look good on you, but the meaning of those colors, because every color has a different meaning to it. And so you have to pay attention to that message that color sends. Make sure it looks good on your skin tone, but also there's a message that color sends. So again, I became my own art project. I broke every style rule in the book. I broke every, because I'm super creative by nature, and rules, I feel stifled by rules. So I just kind of had to figure out my way.
Well, so I'm with you on the rules. I don't like very many, and I don't even know why. I joined the Marines. I was in the Marines for 6 years, and I look back and I said, I don't know how I made it through 6 years of my life with all those rules. But what I like about what you're saying is sometimes people get trained on the job training, right? But I feel like you had on the person training. You actually were kind of like introspective in your approach on how you looked at yourself and you were looking at life and how you would be able to piece your place with others, especially the community and the potential clients that were around you. Now, have you been an entrepreneur all your life?
No.
Okay.
My husband has. I mean, he grew up in a home where mom and dad owned their own business. So he was around that all the time. It never occurred to me that I was going to own my own business. Wasn't even a goal. And then you find yourself just rolling into that part. And then, it just all of a sudden happened that, I can start, you maybe start as a hobby or whatever it is. And then it turns into my goodness, I'm getting paid for this. And now I'm really enjoying it. And, being an entrepreneur or a business owner, it's a lot of discipline. It's a lot of discipline. And again, I said, I don't like rules much, but you have to have them for, guideposts, to keep you somewhat on the road and not in the punji stick somewhere. But
what I love about being an entrepreneur, and really this isn't really spoken too much about being an entrepreneur versus being, working for a business as a manager or someone, who works the line or a supervisor and an employee. One of the, you can't even do it with taxes and other things. It's the ability to say yes and no. I mean, to me, one of the most liberating facts about being an entrepreneur is there are times where I can say yes to something, and there are times where I can say no. And there is nothing more liberating than not to have that one client, which is really not a great client because they're not always right. I mean, we say they are, but sometimes they're not. But to be able to say no to certain clients and yes to other clients, or no to certain opportunities and then yes to certain opportunities. I mean, there's a beauty there, in entrepreneurship. And, one of your jobs that I think is, creating an emotional experience that you're able to paint for your clients through something called brand, and brand really is, at the end of the day, it's a lot of yeses and a lot of nos for the company or the person or both that stands behind that brand. So in your measure or your definition, how do you approach brand? And definitionally speaking, really, what is brand?
Right. So branding, I define it as owning that experience that others have with you. If you think of Starbucks coffee, what is their brand, or what are they selling? And most people will say coffee. But that's not what they're selling. They're selling that experience of a place to meet, a place to meet with your friends, a place to do business interactions, a place to get to know people. It's that whole experience of sitting around a table with a cup of coffee and having a conversation and connecting. So that's what brand is. It's that experience that people have with you. And from a personal branding standpoint, I mean, the good news is we all have a personal brand.
Yeah. Yep.
And the bad news is we all have a personal brand. You have to own that. And so what I do with my clients, and the very first place we start is, if I were to ask 5 of your closest friends, what words come to mind when they think of you, or when they've interacted with you, or when they're referring you to another person, what are those words that you would want them to say? And if I was to ask a complete stranger that just met you for the first time, whether it's they've Googled you online or they've met you face to face, what are those words immediately that come to mind after they've interacted with you? What are those words? And what are those words you never want used to describe you? Yeah. So my main question is, how do you want others to experience you? And most people haven't given it that much thought.
No, and I love that. I know that in my life, I actually worked for Zales at one time, Zales Diamonds. And I didn't have Mary Lynn back then, so the only thing I wore is white shirts and black. So that was my uniform of choice when I worked for Zales, which still I thought I pulled it off pretty well. And Zales never said that they sold diamonds or watches or bracelets. What they sold is they sold love. They were in the business of selling the entirety of love between between a man and woman, or any other configuration of two partners or more coming together. And I always thought that was really interesting, and I didn't really understand it at the time, because I'm like, no, but they pay for the diamonds. And at the end of the day, it wasn't. They paid for the experience of what the diamond represented for their lives at that period of time and beyond. And I love that. And the other thing that I learned, which I see that you teach, is people actually, just like we can wear clothing and color, I love that you said it, because this is the most amazing thing. We wear our words, each and every day. So some of the things that you do for clients, both large and small, is, you probably say, okay, if you want to go out of business pretty quickly, stay in the transaction part of business. I think what you do is you create a whole world of wraparound. So you're bringing more to the story than just the transaction. Tell us a little bit more about how you bring more to the story to your clients.
Well, everything communicates, right? It's as simple as that, but it can be pretty complex. So everything you do, everything you say, and everything you wear has consequences. And it's either strengthening that brand or that perception others have of you, or it's diminishing it. And it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter really what you think. It's just, you need to understand and own that experience. and understand that everything you do, say, or wear has consequences. So, where I really start with people and is figuring out that word that they want to own in the minds of others. And then once you have that word, then that's how I help you build out your personal brand. So if your word for say it's detailed, then everything about you personally, online, and how you present yourself in public at a networking event or whatever has to tie back to that word. You have to look detailed. You have to be put together. Your look has to look detailed. Every hair has to be in place. As Dr. Soni talked about, your messaging. If I call your voicemail, if I get an email from you, it has to show up detailed to me. So everything kind of comes back to that word. So that really is the catalyst and how you can start building out your personal brand. And what I help people with is we define that power word, is what I call it. We define what your power word is. And then we just start building that out. Like I call it popping your brand. You do it personally, you do it online, and you do it out in public. And it's always authentic.
And it really matters, because that authenticity, those words, are your energy, and people can feel the energy. It's conveyed. We've talked about this. This is, what's really great with this show is we've talked about the emotional, the physical, the intellectual, all coming together. All these things create the experience of brand. And what it is, for me, it's like being the sun. You give out such a beautiful, wonderful energy. Things all around you will live. And if you don't have that energy all around you, guess what happens? It all dies, And so, what we're always looking for is, are we creating, like you said, the yeses, or are we creating the no's? And if we're creating the no's, this is why, being with you, Sheila, or being with Dr. Soni, or being with Mary Lynn, you help us get to more yeses. And what's great about it is once you've learned it and you can utilize it day after day after day, it doesn't become work anymore, does it?
Right. And you need to show, you have to show up consistently.
Yes.
So in my book called ICU, The Comprehensive Guide to Breathing Life Back into Your Personal Brand, I take people through a process. To be intentional, you have to have a strategy first and how you want to show up in all these different places. And then you have to show up consistently, because that message needs to be tied through every interaction, whether they meet you for the first time or they've met you, like they know you for 2 or 3 years now. That interaction and that experience people have with you you have to show up consistent all the time.
There's one strategy I work with people is I take a business card and I say, see this business card? And I know that they don't know, what do you feel from that? And they feel nothing. And then take someone that they've known for quite some time and they see that business card. That business card isn't just the physical, it's the emotional that's attached to that card. And that's how we are as people. We will attach everything because one of the things I like to say is it's more important to be memorable than informational. Because it's the emotions that we keep forever, even if we forget the information. Or, another thing I like to say is don't give them so much information that you train them, for someone else who's more memorable than you. When you walk into the room of apples, be the banana. So that's one of the things I say. So tell us how we can get in touch with you so we can learn and you can impart your your knowledge and skill set for others who might want to work with you.
The easiest place is just go to my website. I have links to all of my social media on there, or you can send me an email, which is scrolling here, or there's a contact form on my website as well. So go to imagepowerplay.com and all the information is there and you can connect with me that way.
Well, thank you so much, Sheila, for being on today. It's a wonderful experience with you. And I hope you enjoyed our other guests that were on today.
I did. I took notes, so I learned as well.
If you see me looking down, I'm writing notes as well, because I never let any opportunity go unturned. And, information and just the joy of learning, I think is so foundational to success. So thank you so much again for being on the show today. I appreciate you being here.
Well, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed getting to know you, and I love your energy, and I love your show.
Thank you. Well, everyone, thank you so much for being on the iNentrepreneur radio show on the iNentrepreneur Network. My name is Robert Jones. I'm the owner and chair of the network. And we have multiple ways for you to get seen through magazine, through our book, through in-person networking, virtual networking. We have a magazine. We also have a training academy. So if you'd like more information, you can go to networktogether.net. That's networktogether.net. And you can start with our membership model and meeting other people. So again, we meet here each and every week on Thursdays from 2:30 to 3:30 Arizona time. And I don't ask me if it's on California or Mountain Standard Time or Timbuktu time. I don't know. All I know is Arizona has one time zone and it stays that way all year long. Everyone have a great week, and I look forward to seeing you next Thursday at 2:30. Bye-bye.